Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to talk about impact for 1.5 hours now. I'm artistic director of, yeah, we are. You're laughing already. I'm the artistic director of Movies That Matter, and together, Lo is sitting here. We were at the Geneva Film Festival. Are you? Yeah, there. They started to run an impact lab with pitches and so on, and we are the little sister of that. So absolutely check out their impact days, and after that, check out our impact days. And for that reason, IDFA asked us to, hello, welcome, asked us to do a really good talk on what are we going to talk about. Because you know what? Film is one of the best means to create impact. It creates dialogue in society, it could change politics, and it can for surely change decision makers. And the panel who I'm going to introduce in a minute are really examples of that. Impact can become an industry. It has become an industry over the last decades. And where we're going to talk about what is now the state of impact production, defining impact. Then how do you finance impact? And actually, what is the role of a filmmaker when impact is being shaped, a campaign is being shaped? So this talk will bring together impact focus on professionals and filmmakers who achieved impact. And the goal is, of course, that we all, so you're all part of that, become a new sort of movement where film is not only about showing in the cinemas, at festivals, at streamers or on television, but you can do so much more. And for the filmmakers in the house, I've been a filmmaker, so I know you worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I Q&A'd a film yesterday, Innocence, go and see it, of Guy Daviti. He worked 10 years on the film. So it's then really important when you know so much about your subject as a filmmaker to bring around a team to help you create impact. On that note, what we're going to do, we're going to get a really beautiful keynote of Eefje Blankenvoort. Then Daniel Heersets Turkov, but it's actually Turkov Wilson of Think Film. No, that's all good. He's going to talk. Rob Williams, participant from the US, is going to talk. Laura de such a beautiful surname. Laura de Peretti de la Rocca from Storyboard Collective based in Geneva is going to talk. And then my dear friend Sam Sokko, the filmmaker of Softy. They had an amazing impact campaign with that. And here, so make sure to. When is the other? Tonight is tonight, tomorrow. Also in Tuschinski 1, free money, go and watch it. On that note, I'd like to invite you, because you are going to do the first inspirational talk. Can we have a big round of applause for Eve?
Yeah, so usually I do a talk for about 1.5 hours. So this is on Shadow Game on speed in 13 minutes. I'll go through what we did with Shadow Game Impact. Kids are dying every day on European borders. You do nothing to protect them. This is Eski, short for Sajid Khan. He was 15 when he fled Afghanistan by himself. And he just turned 18 when he addressed this room full of members of the European Parliament and the European Commission. Eski is one of the teenagers from our film Shadow Game, which documents the dangerous journey of unaccompanied minors through Europe. Fleeing war, they search for protection, but they are met with great violence. Eski, Jano, Shiru, Mustafa, Salem, Mo, Abdullah, and Amin, these young men have been physically and mentally abused on our borders when they were children. And still they were willing to come to the heart of the EU in June this year, to an institution that had violated their rights, that had really done nothing to protect them. Something happened that day. These kids, who were hiding in the shadows for years, took the stage and unapologetic told the people in power what is going on in Europe. Driving back the next day, Sajid Khan and I were talking, and he looked at me and said, "You know, I think for us, all is possible now." The title of today's panel is The Magic of Impact. Well, that moment for me was magic. Working on Shadow Game has been really a transformative journey, both for the protagonist, Sajid Khan now and when we first met him, but also for us as filmmakers. So what do you encounter when working on impact as a filmmaker? That's what I will talk about today. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Shadow Game. So Shadow Game is a film. It's co-directed by Els van Driel, who's here as well, and me, in collaboration with the protagonists. And I'll show you a very short part of our trailer.
कंट्रोल हो गया सारा शहर.
Attention, attention. I'm warning you that you're at the Hungarian border. If you cross illegally or attempt to cross, it's counted to be a crime in Hungary. I'm warning you to hold back. Warning you to hold back.
أنا وأخوي شيرو هربنا من عفرين، من سوريا عفرين.
والله دارفور هي منطقة صعبة، مسألة خربتها مشاكل والحروبات.
مشكلتي لا أقدر أرجع للعراق من يأذوني ولا أقدر.
يعني كنت مبسوط يعني بسوريا. قذايف، صواريخ، بأكثر بعد ما بالحرب. أي بس هي الحرب.
You are asking for me. You will spend a time there in an area where you will not have peace, where you will not be able to go to doctor, where you will not be able to go to school. When you spend a life there, you will not spend a life there.
So with Shadow Game, we didn't want to tell a sad refugee story, but a story that does justice to these children who are vulnerable, yes, but also persistent. They are funny, they are adolescents. We tell the story completely from their perspective and in collaboration with them. Because it turned out that many of the kids had been filming their journey along the way, and their own material became a really important part of the film. And that they were telling their own story was really crucial as well for the impact. But Shadow Game is much more. It's a transmedia project. We believe that telling the story in different ways, we can reach different audiences, and it can offer different perspectives on the same story, thereby in itself creating a bigger impact. So the full-length documentary film tells the story of the journey. The short docs show what the kids encounter after arrival in the country of destination. For example, dealing with the asylum system, building a new life, but also struggling to be reunited with their families. The photo series, A New Beginning, focuses on identity. What does it do to you when you're forced to flee at such a vulnerable age and to start a new life all by yourself? The investigative journalist project proves who is responsible for the violence. And through a game, young audiences can get a first-hand understanding of what their peers go through. Shadow Game is also an extensive educational program. We launched a music album. And recently, a Flemish theater company made a digital storytelling project in which you can follow part of the year-long conversation Sajid Khan and I had on WhatsApp while he was stuck in Bosnia. And last but not least, we started a campaign to raise political awareness and collect signatures to offer to the European Parliament and the European Commission. So why? Well, working on this film and traveling through what we call the dark side of Europe for 3 years, Els and I immediately knew we are not just going to make a film. We want to make a real impact. And we were really driven by a great sense of injustice. How was it possible that this is going on in Europe at our borders? And why didn't we know this? We were also driven by the feeling that there were really many opportunities for impact and real change. So what is impact for us? Basically, it's reaching the right audiences. It's creating awareness. It's starting a dialogue, activate people to do something, and in the end, really try to change something for the better on different levels, on the individual level, all the way up to the political level, and anything in between. So these are the goals that we formulated together with our impact team. With Shadow Game, we want to raise awareness about the situation of unaccompanied minors traveling through Europe. We want to activate people to do something to help these young people. And we want to put the rights of these young refugees high on the international political agenda by reaching policy and decision makers. Our main message in the campaign became protect children on the move. We can have a really long and complicated discussion about the European asylum system, but in the end we felt this is something we could all agree on, protect children on the move. A shifting perspective is already, of course, impact. We have seen audiences change from pretty anti-refugee to a more welcoming attitude. And not everybody wants maybe to do something after seeing a film, but still we felt we needed to give the audience concrete ideas for action. I mean, it's a really tough topic. It's a harsh film to watch, and you risk that people feel defeated after seeing a film like that. So that's why we always stress, everyone can do something. So we made it really simple. Give your voice. Tell people to watch the film. Share our campaign. Sign the petition. Give your time. Sign up as a volunteer at one of the grassroots organizations, for example, that we met along the journey. Or give your money. Donate to a grassroots organization or to the Shadow Game Fund that we started, which benefits the boys from the film directly. Together with the boys, we made this manifesto. We basically asked them what should be different. Well, children should be able to apply for asylum in a safe way. They should be relocated in a safe way. I mean, it's silly you even have to write it down, but there should be no violence, and the asylum procedure must take children into account. Basically, it's nothing more than the Children's Rights Convention, the Refugee Convention, all these EU guidelines that are already in place. So we always tell people, actually this is what we already agreed on. Maybe let's try to stick to our own principles. So with our international partners, we translated and distributed the manifesto in many different languages. And our promise was to the audience to really hand it over to the European Parliament and Commission, and we did. The film was released at Movies That Matter in April 2021 and then hit theaters in the Netherlands. We traveled all over the country for the Q&As. Some of the boys from the film arrived in the Netherlands and joined us with these Q&As, like Jano here in the picture, or Mohammed. And we screened at many film festivals around the world, also, of course, in all these theaters. But for us, it was also really important to reach certain audiences, not just a general audience. For example, people who can really directly change policy on the ground, make a change in how they work, how they look at their children, who they work with. So we did, for example, special screenings with the people from the Guardianship Organization here in the Netherlands, the Immigration Service, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a specialized police unit that's working on human smuggling. And together with our European partners, we did also screenings in border countries such as Slovenia, Croatia, and Italy. Another really important group that we want to reach is youth. We want European youth to know what is going on. And with educational screenings in the Netherlands alone, we have reached over 30,000 children. Different organizations here in the Netherlands, such as IDFA, Movies That Matter, also the Dutch Council for Refugees, but also NGOs and scholars from different European countries have created educational materials in different languages. And it's now being used in primary education, high schools, and universities. Whenever we can, we collect reactions of those youngsters watching the film, and we ask them, do you have a question to European politicians? And Bo from Belgium is one of them. Later, we also use these statements and questions in the campaign towards the European Parliament. And I just really love her question, so I'm just going to play it for you.
Ik ben zeker dat het illegaal is om minderjarigen te schoppen en te slaan, terwijl ze gewoon naar een land willen waar er geen oorlog is en waar hun familie en zichzelf veilig zijn. Dus, wat gaan jullie hier nu tegen doen?
Yeah, so politicians, what will you do about that? I'm pretty sure it's illegal as well. So to make it that simple, to bring it back to those simple questions, I think that really worked well for our campaign. So yeah, reaching politicians, of course, was really pivotal to trying to change policies. So at every screening we had, at every event, we invited politicians. For example, a member of the Senate, but also members of Dutch Parliament. Also mayors and aldermen, and the kids would share their story, give them a portrait, to remind them of all the kids who are stuck on European borders. We spoke as experts in the Dutch Parliament, and then we campaigned to bring the boys into the European Parliament. Well, how do you measure success? That, of course, is really diverse. It's quantitative and qualitative. Just let me highlight some stuff. I mean, young people really told us that they started looking at the refugees differently after seeing the film and engaging also in conversation with the protagonist. Some signed up as volunteers and started their own actions, like the girl there. She collected goods for kids their age. Young people, but also hundreds of people donated money, for example, to our Shadow Game Fund. People sent cards and gifts to the boys. One company donated 1% of their profit to the charities that we highlighted on our website. We could make a real change for the protagonist, helping, for example, with family reunification by donating money, but also helping with a good lawyer. We stopped the violence at the Croatian border with the journalism project, well, at least for some time. And we brought the topic into the heart of the EU. We went on EU tour even to the Council of Europe. And on the right, you see Eski and Jano with 3 members of Croatian Parliament. That was really mind-blowing. So what are the lessons that we learned on this journey? Let's first see, what do you need? Of course, the protagonists. That's pivotal. Some of the main characters in our film really turned out to be true ambassadors of their own story, but also of the story of their peers that are still stuck at European borders. And they play a really important role in our impact campaign. Their involvement, of course, can shift. You know, sometimes they just have other stuff on their mind, so we always check in on them. How are you? What are your needs? Do you still want to be involved? So our relationship is ever evolving. While some of the boys are now maybe not so involved anymore, busy with work, love, hobbies, Eski, for example, is now actually co-director of his own follow-up film called The Mind Game. He's telling us now what to do. So what do you need? Well, you need a great team. You can't do it by yourself. And you need a team that is as passionate about the subject as you are, and who is willing to dedicate themselves, even if it costs a lot of time and there's not a lot of money. That's also a great pitfall, of course, because how long can you ask them to do that? You also need great partners. And to be honest, that wasn't easy at first. For example, big NGOs were really difficult to work with. And we shifted along the way. We learned be open for new partners. For example, Ben & Jerry's wanted to campaign with us towards the European Parliament. And Kids' Rights also joined us later on in the process. You need a lot of time and stamina. I will not lose my stamina, Sajid Khan would always tell us during making the film and during the journey he was undertaking. So it's a phrase that we have thought of a lot. You know, to make an impact, you need to make time. It's already a year and a half that Els and I have been working on it now. And it's just a lot. So this is the gift that we send each other every week, at least once a week, I think. Then some other pointers. Dream big. Dream big. And at the same time, be realistic. I mean, we want world peace, but we know it's not going to happen anytime soon. I mean, we want the European asylum policy to change, to be humane, but it's a fight on many fronts. So be realistic about what you can. And to fight the cynicism that you sometimes encounter, and even in yourself, you have to celebrate small victories, be it a prize or, you know, maybe a great screening, a conversation you had with something. You have to celebrate. Stick to your plan and be open for new ideas. So we have really strict sort of guiding principles. We check everything we do. Protect children on the move, that's the leading message in everything. And at the same time, we want to be open for new ideas, new partners, new directions. So for example, Storyboard Collective and also Khadija from Best Impact Movies are now joining the effort to make an impact in France, taking impact again to another level in a country that we don't know, which is really exciting and in a way super scary. But also, for example, the Flemish theater group, Skagen, who I was referring to before, they made a project, a digital storytelling project, with our material. Very private WhatsApp conversations that Eski and I were having for more than a year. That was really scary to give, you know, as a director, to give your material to someone else. And even becoming a protagonist myself. So I was sharing my concerns with Eski one day about this, and he told me, but you know, Shadow Game is sort of a brand now. You should, you know, have other people work on it. And he said, you think the founder of Pizza Hut is still working in a Pizza Hut? And you know, I said, but maybe I don't like their pizza. It's like, you can try. So I will remember that. So things we struggle with to finish up. Impact costs a lot of money. You need to do a lot of the fundraising for every new step you want to take. And also a question that we ask ourselves as filmmakers, but how do we survive financially? Even funds that support impact sometimes say, well, you don't need a fee to be at a screening or to organize a screening because you want this, right? So if that doesn't change, how can we filmmakers keep on working on impact? I think it's a really big question to answer. And again, what is our role also? That's a really big question. Are we still filmmakers and journalists, or have we become activists? Can we be both? And last question that we struggle with, where does it end, if ever? So that was it. Thank you.
Much. Thank you so much. You would think now I'm going to do a real Q&A with Evie. But what the beauty is of you think like there's a lot of people on this panel. That's true. Because there's a lot of people involved. And where this is an inspirational talk. Danielle, when you hear this, I mean, you've been doing impact. You're going to do a little presentation in a minute of Think Film. But when you hear Evie, what is your first reaction? What pops up? What is?
Well, hello.
Yeah, you're there.
Everybody hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you're on.
First of all, it's like I take my hat off to you, obviously. In English, sometimes we say kudos, right? And I just go, what you've put into this and the team have put into this to get the results is really, is for me, what we call at Think Film legacy. You know, you've made a legacy piece out of all the different components. What started as a film has become something that is really, like you say, a brand and an enterprise. And I think that's really important. Obviously, for me, the biggest thing I see that hurts my heart is always how much the industry puts money into this. And that's something that we've been fighting for and we have fought for the last 5 years to make sure that money comes into productions early so that you are not doing this as a charitable thing, but you can actually show that there's value. Like, I mean, you basically did the marketing for all the people that funded your film for free, you know?
Yeah. So maybe it's good. I think everybody knows Danielle, but maybe 2 people in the audience do not know you and what you're doing. That could so be true. So Think Film is really one of the big. There's some more here in this panel, picking up the impact part of the film. So in your case, you really started the film and went all the way through, but you're working on a lot more films. So on that note, could you do a bit of an introduction? What you all do at Think Film, because you're coming later, sometimes early, but sometimes later in the film, but then really are busy with the part of the impact, because I think there's nobody in this room who didn't think, that's a lot of work what they've been doing, these ladies. And I know them for a long time, so I know they did. So, but you took on another part of that, a task, so to speak. So,
are we allowed to show the trailer first?
Of course. Could we see the trailer of Think Film?
AI will ultimately be the best thing ever to happen to humanity, or the worst thing ever.
在我接走的过程中间，都是借助本器物所造成的疾病。
Fortsätter att öppna gruvor mitt i renbetesområden. Man fortsätter att bygga kraftledningar och hyttefält i samisk område.
O uau é como se fosse uma barreira. Todo desmatado.
Это Навальный, Алексей, вас беспокоит. Хотел узнать, зачем вы хотели меня убить.
The pot is knowingly poisoning 70,000 local residents for the last 40 years.
والله زادنا إيماننا والله العظيم ما بنستسلم لأي شيء.
Se ve la casa como cuando era chiquito. Prefieren tumbarla y vender terreno.
És sokszor attól félek, hogy nem ők fognak bántani, hanem az a csomó másik ember, aki képtelen felfogni a valóságot, vagy nem akarja, nincs ideje rá.
Udah diskarza mapuye. मैले नभले कसैले नभनिरहेछ.
Ваня, забили наших хлопців і дівчат, і жінок за їхні сльози.
Utsidan och brutna ben och whatever, det spelar ingen roll. Här på insidan är de värsta, det är liksom.
Es ist schon beachtlich, dass das vor nur wenigen Wochen menschliche Scheiße war und jetzt eigentlich ein bedenkenloser Recyclingdünger ist.
Na ukiwa mkubwa unaweza tamani kuwa nini?
Mimi ni engineer.
That's a lot of films.
That's that moment in your life where you go, we are actually doing that. That's our company? Oh shit, that's a lot of movies. I wanted to first say thank you to Participant. Why? Because it was Participant as a company that I studied religiously before setting up Think Film. And I cannot sit here today without telling you that I was deeply inspired by everything that Participant does, and felt that being at the heart and the center of Europe, that Think Film could bring an identity that reflected some of the individuality of impact in every one of those countries. So I just wanted to say that. But what's Think Film? I'm the founder and executive director. I also have my powerhouse CEO in the room, Amy Shepherd. And we're very blessed, and I'm super excited that we're having this conversation at IDFA today. For us, it's exactly like you said. Impact is a supply chain, and for us, it's from early development all the way to the final phase, to distribution. And it is about the concrete, tangible deliverables, like you said, Marja. For us, we've got a film here in the Forum, for example. Early development, jump out. The idea is that these 8 acrobats are going around the world. They're street kids. We got Cirque du Soleil in. The film isn't finished. The way they're going to be involved in that campaign to support the kids.
You said Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
We've got a film here that's in the selection, How to Save a Dead Friend, an incredible story about disillusioned youth in Russia and suicide and their hopelessness and how they survive in society. We actually got the European Council of Art Therapies to really constitute recognizing those who are qualified art therapists to travel across borders and actually deliver their work. Impact is big and small, like you said, it depends. We also have the territory here, which you saw. We jumped on board at post-production. There we changed the legislation for indigenous communities to be protected at the EU level and have their human rights protected in any negotiation in their supply chains with corporations. And the one that we've just taken on at distribution, Navalny, we just got a 9th sanctions package announced as part of a screening we did in Brussels. So for us, the tangible is what we do. And if there is no tangible, we can't deliver the impact.
I think I'd like to now go to Rob and jump to you to introduce Participant, and then Laura, and then everybody to hear a bit, and then also going like how you then structured it and how do you, and if you have questions, just shout, yeah? It's a bit hard to see you, but if you have a question, just say I have a question, and then make sure you can ask that question. No worries about that. And then really, how do you shape it then? Because you raised quite a lot of questions on casting, on who is in there, how long are you doing this, if it becomes a brand, does it stay the same way, etc., etc. So I think we'll pick up on that after that we introduce everybody. So over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Williams from Participant. We are an American company. We're based in Los Angeles, and Participant is now 18 years old. We have a really amazing kind of collection of film. I've been there about 8 years, and over those 18 years have done 130, 140 feature films. We do both narrative films and documentary films. The company is founded with the idea that a good story can change people's hearts and minds and inspire them to work towards positive social change. So you'll see this in every one of the films on our slate, that they have something to do with issues that are facing humanity. Really, the key themes including the environment, human rights, civil rights. They're all woven into the fabric of our content. And what's really remarkable, and I think and thank you, Danielle, for the shout out, is that Participant since the beginning has really been thinking about, at the genesis of these movies, like people are going to see this movie, they're going to see Inconvenient Truth, and they're going to ask, like, what can I do? They're going to feel inspired, and so we have this amazing. Well, first of all, I handle content strategy for Participant, which is it's really more, we're a partnership company, and we're producing a slate of films that's like 10 or 12 films per year. We're also doing series, and my job is really more on the side of working with our partners in terms of, distribution and we're not a distributor, so we work with lots of different companies and forming lots of different partnerships and international partnerships. And so it's been really great to be at IDFA again in person and see a lot of our documentary partners and filmmakers and people that we can do new films with, and people that we have that we're working with on our current slate of documentaries. We have 2 here at the festival, 2 really amazing films, and our filmmakers are here to support them. So we have from Steve James, and you'll see also what's great about Participant is we work with some filmmakers that, we find a filmmaker we like, we'll work with them again and again. And Steve James, we've done a few projects with over the past few years, and his most recent film is here in the festival. It's called A Compassionate Spy. Screening a few more times at the festival if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
And then the other film is called All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is by Laura Poitras. We, before I joined the company, our visionary leader of documentaries, Diane Wireman, who passed away last year, this is part of her legacy. These are projects she would be so happy to see what's going on with All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. And anyway, Laura Poitras, she worked with Laura on Citizen4 years ago, and
talking about impact.
And talk about impact, yeah. So this film is about. Have any of you seen it?
Yeah,
I can't really see with the
lights. Yeah. I see hands being raised.
Okay, great. Yeah. So if you've seen the film, it's a beautiful film, and it's really, Nan Golden. It's about Nan Golden, and who, it's telling the story of how she is involved with this organization called PAIN, that's about helping people who are addicted to OxyContin and providing services, and also, but part of that is also really addressing a great injustice, which is the Sackler family name on these artistic institutions. So it's really the story of how she, became an activist, and how she is now taking that to really help people who are suffering from OxyContin abuse and OxyContin addiction and the harmful effects of that, which she very personally has dealt with. When you see the film, you'll know. So that's a film where really, the social impact is woven into what the film is about, and it's been really great to see the reaction that has come from that.
You have a little clip.
What's that?
You have a little clip. You want to show it or not yet?
Let's do the clip. Well, yeah, let's do the clip. Yeah.
Yeah.
The clip, yeah.
There are some pretty impressive films in that clip.
I love that reel.
Yeah.
And I love too that it's there's a couple films in there. So Dark Waters, which is in Danielle's reel, and we're so happy to work with Danielle and Think Film on the European. Wait, are you going to talk about this? So I don't want to steal your. Okay. Well, I'll just zoom out a bit and talk about some of the issues that are really important to us as an organization and that we've supported over. So the environment and the climate crisis, climate catastrophe. Inconvenient Truth was one of our first films, and over the years we've done other films that address this in different. We're always looking for new ways to kind of address this issue, which unfortunately is not getting better. We did Dark Waters really speaks to that in a way, and we did a film that was in Cannes last year with an Indian filmmaker called Rahul Jain, Invisible Demons, which is about the effects of pollution and all the kind of things that are happening in the world that are drought, flooding, terrible air quality. All the issues are kind of happening in India as such a you can see it in this film, and it's really impactful. When we do a film about that's with the on the issue of the environment, we're thinking about it from the point of before we even make the film. It's like, what are the impact objectives going to be? Who are the organizations we might work with?
So that's interesting to hear. Yeah, exactly what you're saying now.
Yeah.
So we have these incredible films, and then you find the right impact persons and the financing for that. Or
Well, I
how
should
does
say that
work?
we also have we have a team of people at Participant that are really looking after these relationships and these partners and working with organizations and NGOs, and so when we do Inconvenient Sequel, which we did a couple of years ago, which was the follow-up to Inconvenient Truth with Al Gore, we'll go back and those organizations we work with on the first round that we've been, by the way, working with for years and years. Not just it's not like we
you build relationships.
Our impact campaigns are about they have a life that begins begins before the release of the movie. There's the release of the movie, and then they continue for a long lifespan that we can continue the conversation on Food Inc. or Inconvenient Truth is ongoing. And when we have new movies that speak to that, like Invisible Demons or Dark Waters, we will think about we have relationships with organizations, and we have.
So you have a whole palette of on the different issues, environmental issues, social issues. You have already long-lasting relationship, which makes it, I guess, to get the impact on the one hand, but also to get we will get to the financial side in a moment, but also that speaks so on both sides, right?
Yeah, and just the way that it works is, we are making these films with this in mind, and then when we identify a distributor, and we work with all kinds of different distributors, and one of the examples I was going to talk about today is Descendant, which is Margaret Brown's film. Have you all seen? Has the audience seen Descendant on Netflix? Which is started at Sundance and just released in theaters and on Netflix a few weeks ago. And we, the campaign, our campaigns team, it's called Campaigns and Engagement at Participant. They work with our distributor, really to shape a campaign and to design something that is complementary to what the distributor is doing, and oftentimes brings and the distributors are. For the most part, really happy with these, campaigns because they bring in a different kind of audience. It's more activist and not your typical people that you market the film to. Like we still, and I should also say that what's important and part of what I work on is we're making all different kinds of films. You can see Fantastic Woman international films. We're doing narrative films with studios that have obviously larger distribution paths. We have streamer films. We have documentaries that are that really require more specialized handling. And in all those cases, really the goal is we want to get the widest possible audience for our films so that we can have the most impact. Like, because if people aren't seeing the films, there's not you can't really drive the impact. So really, step one is trying to make the movie as entertaining as reach the widest possible audience that we can.
About
and then so that we can have this effect with the. Do I still have time to keep talking or?
No, you can talk for a bit, but I'm going to cut you off in a minute.
Okay, yeah, because it's I have lots of examples that I wrote down, but it's on a film like Roma, with Alfonso Cuarón, that. Is a narrative film that is not. I like this example because it's not one that I think you see the film and people discover it either in theaters or on Netflix, and they don't necessarily think of it as a social impact film. But we did my colleagues did an incredible campaign working really early on with our distribution partner to, and we like to think like, how can our film be a tool for what's going to further, and improve society, basically. And in this example, we identified a couple groups, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, that could use this film as this is a film from the point of view of a domestic worker and can be used to highlight some of the issues facing them, including providing rights and benefits, and it's an issue that requires more attention than it's getting. And how can this film highlight and elevate the conversation around that? And so we found these really great organizations that we worked with since the premiere of the film, since before it was launched on Netflix, and that continues today. And it's had a lot of really great effect in terms of having a high-profile film release like that's talked about and winning awards and has really contributed to that
helps.
It had a big effect, and they've had a lot of success.
But not all films get on Netflix, and not all films are as big as yours and that kind of director. So I guess there are sort of different types of impact here as well.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I come back to you later?
I'm sorry. I was worried I wouldn't have enough to say when I love your presentation, and I was like, oh no, I didn't.
No.
But yes.
I had a prep meeting with these people that lasted for 15 hours. No, I'm joking. No. That did not. But you all have so much to say. So I'd like to go to Laura now from collective, a story collective.
Hello.
Hello. Because, well, maybe you should introduce yourself. You can do it the best. We work together also with you at Movies That Matter. You worked together with everybody because this is from the other perspective. Being, how do we finance then impact? And we need somebody for that as well. Apparently, you're having an amazing organization for that. So
we need somebody, and we need more
yeah.
more people than just us. So I'm from the Storyboard Collective. My name is Laure, and we are supporting storytelling for social change. The area we focus on is underrepresented communities and underrepresented voices, and helping them to tell their stories in their own way, and specifically to have an impact with those stories. In general, we're not only looking for issue-driven, investigative stories that can actually transform and be active, but also it is also very important for us to see beautiful piece of art, to make sure that it can trigger empathy and action, and be actionable also at another level. And this combination is the magic of impact. But it's a long path to get there. And I guess as a philanthropic organization, as we are, there was some questions we needed to ask ourselves. What is our role in the field? What is needed? And what gaps can we fill in? There's a lot of gaps. And we understood early on that the major issue was generally funding, but also capacity building, because here around this table there's magic people actually being super active in the field of impact, but still there's a lack of impact producers, there's a lack of structures, and there's a lack of understanding at a lot of different levels. I don't want to seem depressive here, but
no, you're very optimistic.
But there's solutions. There are solutions, and we've seen the work of festivals, and they're incredible partners, and how Laura from FEFDH built her Impact Days, and the work you're doing too at Movies That Matter is extremely important, because it's helping from the start filmmakers to understand how they can get the film further, and what type of tools, what type of partners, the toolbox, everything that they need to move forward with the film into making a campaign.
And building a team as well. Because
And building
like
the team.
Exactly.
Exactly. You were talking also, Danielle, about like how there's everything, the team, the partners, and it was also in your presentation. It's such a collaborative work, and everyone needs to be willing to work together. Yeah. So we do think that there's, as a philanthropic organization, a gap that we need to fill at the capacity building level. So we're also supporting regional cultural organization a bit everywhere in the world. There's the amazing work the GIPA network is doing. For those who don't know this acronym, it's the Global Impact Producers Assembly. They're launching tomorrow.
Miriam, you're in the room, right? Yeah.
The 16th.
The 16th is launched.
A directory with all impact producers that are willing to be on their website for filmmakers to actually find someone to work with them. Because you've heard FU, you can't do this forever, and you need people to work with you and to take the film further. So this is also an important gap. Having organizations all over the world training and reuniting the practitioners. So we're trying to be active in this field. And after, when it's about the campaign itself, there's lucky filmmakers in campaign encountering Danielle and Think Films and Participant Media and other organizations, but there's the others. And there are so many filmmakers coming to us and telling us, we have this film, we have this potential, but how, what
now? How do we get to the next step?
And I guess there's really this chicken and egg problem on how to get from just the idea of wanting to do a campaign to having a very it's not like a year-long work, but just having a strategy, a budget, something that you can present, and after get additional funding. Because we are conscious and we are here to support, because we've been introduced to the field from the field itself, but there's a lot of other funders who are there and have thousands of projects and are going to select very fast. So the films, when they go to them, they need to be prepared.
Yeah.
So we're willing also to help in that very first
Building up,
stage and that strategy phase.
Danielle wants to say, then I want to go to someone. Yeah,
Sorry, just a comment.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And but I would say it also starts with people like Aoife.
And
Right?
Sam, where are we going in a minute?
And Sam, right?
Aoife.
Sorry.
Don't speak there.
Thank you.
If you as creatives in the business don't ask for impact and are not driving it from your belief of what your film can do, how the hell can impact producers get money for you if you don't see it yourself from the very beginning? I always say this super briefly, like I never had any contacts in this film business. I lived on a council estate in a small place in the south of the UK. If you don't believe that you can do it, if you don't fight every day for it, then nobody would pay me, right? The reason we're paid right now is because we showed them we could deliver it. And I think it has to come from the artists. Yeah. That's where it starts.
That's why we jump to the artist. Sam Soko from Kenya.
Yes.
And you're having an incredible film now at IDFA called Free Money, but before you had a film, Softy, where you created a whole impact. I'm nearly about to say Miriam, come up front, because Miriam is sitting in the audience, who is the impact producer. You should maybe wave a little bit, yeah? She's an incredible lady. But could you explain, are people familiar with the film Softy? I guess, yeah, people are. Good, great. Of course, there you had quite an impact. Could you elaborate a bit on that, and then move on maybe to Free Money?
Hi, hello everyone. Hi. Can you hear me? Hi. Hi everyone. Effie is the artists, as they call us here. So it's, I don't know, even it's like there's so many thoughts, there's so many things that have been said that are incredible and amazing. And I think in Effie's presentation, kind of putting it down, she kind of really broke it down in terms of what that experience is. But there's a saying, there's a street saying in my country where we say the things on the ground are different. You know, when we're here and we're talking about them, when you write the proposal, even when you get the money to do what you want to do, when you reach the ground, things are different. And that's exactly what our journey and experience with Softy was. And as a matter of context is what happens to the filmmakers and the storytellers and the artists in a place where from the get-go you don't have money to do that thing that you want to do. So creating that art, making that film, telling that story. So from that point, and I mean not only money, but resource in terms of technical ability, resource in terms of crew, even you not knowing there is something called documentary in this way. Because for us, we grew up with documentary being the voice of a British man saying, you know, let me tell you the story about. And so whenever you're telling people I want to make documentary, the feedback you get, you're like, why haven't I hearing someone saying things? And when you want to make films in a particular way, you hit so many roadblocks along the way. And it took 7 years to make Softy. So how do you tell me after 7 years that I need to do an impact campaign after that? Right? It's something you have to think about. It's something you have to like. It's incredible soul searching, right? And is this the path I chose for myself? And when you go through that, but then at the same time, so Softy is the story of a photojournalist, Boniface Mwangi, and it chronicles his journey with him and his wife in how he moves from being a photojournalist into a political activist and into politics, and reflects our life and experience as Kenyans and what that goes and what we went through and what we've gone through in the last, now it's almost 12 years, and how cyclic, problematic politics is, and from, post-colonial problems into leadership situations and what's happening in the globe in terms of politics. So in this film, when you're making that film and you hit all these roadblocks and you're trying to share this film, because we don't have distribution, not even close, because from the get-go your government doesn't want you to show that film. So who do you show that film to? The only people who want to watch that film is probably people in the West or in North America, and even in those places there's expectation in terms of quality. You know, you didn't film like this, you didn't do like this, you didn't edit like this, we love this like this. And when you're going through all that, eventually, once as a team we complete the film and we start sharing the film and there's reaction to this, what we did as a team is like, we're gonna try and trick our audience a little bit, and if we can, you know, if everything works out, we'll get a decent festival. And we'll use the decent festival to tell people, like, you know, people out there like it, so maybe you might like it. And we're lucky we got a decent festival called Sundance. And
it's not such a... That's incredible.
And as sad as it was right after that, actually after we attended Impact Days, COVID happened and everything shut down. But there was so much noise and so much buzz about the film that even as the government tried to have us censor the film, we again tricked them and told them, you're like, no, we did a cut down of the film, so we've removed everything you don't want to watch. And they didn't watch it, and they just told us everybody can watch it. And we put it in the theater in COVID, right? Yeah. And there were a couple of really big films, I think including a participant one. And we were the most watched film in the local theater. And the reality of that was because this was one of the first times our audiences were watching content from one of their own. Yeah. You know? And when it comes to impact and engaging in impact, I think we lose sight, particularly in underrepresented area, what it means to make films and tell stories with the people who come from these places. Because there's certain things we kind of overlook. There's certain things we don't see as important. But what that did is we now engage in impact on two levels, from a storyteller level and a community level. Because now storytellers start to believe it is possible. You know, they're like, because they look at me, they're like, I'm such an ordinary dude. Like, if this guy did it, how the hell can I not do it? You understand? So immediately they can start doing that. All of a sudden, you have an impact of people wanting to make more and more films, wanting to be like, I have this story to tell.
Yeah, no, because movement, of course, finance your outreach, and I mean the plan you've been writing was really, really, really strong in terms of how you would go into the communities and so on, and that's a totally different way of impact
of engaging. Exactly.
But it's actually, if I hear you, it's also bridges with what Rob was saying. Like, you have to make that it's strong films, good stories, that it's. In Kenya, people like it. I recall that really well, how that went, but also internationally, and sometimes also part of the impact. And then going back to the grassroots is like making a buzz about the film, where it's impossible in the young country, and then it being embraced by.
It's connecting. It's kind of connecting both of these things. It's kind of like being like, we can make a great film that's entertaining, that audiences can engage, then can embrace and can react to it. But at the same time, you can make a great film with which audiences on the ground can actually also use. Because our greatest salespeople for Softy were family groups on WhatsApp and who were like, hey, have you seen this thing? Because it felt like gossip, you know, because we've seen this family that are doing this, have you seen it? And it just went round in that way. And people had like, you'd have someone who watches it in the UK, putting it in their family group in Kenya, sending to another person in the village, and being like, have you seen this film? So something we did during our Independence Day in December, because we had an election this year. So from December last year, we put the film on YouTube, freaking 80 minutes. And everybody said nobody's going to watch an 80-minute film on YouTube. and complete it. And in 3 days, we had over 100,000 people watching that film. Yeah. And just to tell you how people struggle to get 4 minutes for people to watch on YouTube in our country. And we managed to talk to our distributors to allow us to do it. And once we did it, now it feeds into now translating. So we ended up, doing translations of the film and all that stuff. But how all this connects is in consequently the films that we're working on and the films that I'm working on. So we run a production company called LBX Africa, and we're trying to work with different filmmakers in the continent, just using
very
our
successful. I
experiences.
don't know if you're familiar with Generation Africa, who came out last year, many films. Can I jump a bit from not so much the lessons learned, that sounds really naff, but I mean, now going to free money, so is now the campaign different? I mean, the casting, you had an amazing main character, an amazing family all together in Softy. Free Money, you have one really strong.
Free Money is very different because it's now about bringing two different worlds in context. So Free Money is a film that follows the world's largest universal basic income experiment that's been taking place in Kenya. It's a 12-year experiment, so we filmed 5 years, not 12 years. And it follows a non-profit that's doing the experiment, and we followed one of the villages where the experiment takes place. Maybe it's a time for me to show you a clip.
Show a little clip
from the film.
Então, lá na linha sapar blues.
Eu conheço a parte de nós. Peço estudar. Minha sapar de nós por
Sapar blues sapar.
Minha nesse bigar.
Sapar blues. Não, sabe? Olha, gente. Sani eu queria ver cara nem da pena, mas eu tinha visto, ele sabe tu hoje. Wangi ya, né? Kata message do. Itawe mo ade. Itane mo ade. One.
You have received Kenya shillings 2,280 shillings.
Kenya Limited.
Segovia.
Oh no, you. Bini marodo. Bini marodo.
Ado ko nya sai ro kamano ya nya sai neno gima bore family mar ko gutu.
Dok mai koro idi chiro. O ya pasere kia.
Ni sai me yod. Ta make just dia nem. Ya kamza.
Yep. And the thing that's interesting about this film was trying to deal in the gray area when it comes to giving, the idea of non-profits trying there's a long history of non-profits coming to Africa to try to make a difference, quote unquote. And at the same time, I think there's a total lack of conversations in terms of the agency that communities where this difference is supposed to happen have, and what that means. But at the same time, what change and transformation giving does. So with this film, together with my co-director, Lauren De Filippo, we were trying to not only bring both of our points of views of where we come from, and hopefully foster conversation in this space and in this gray area, particularly not only with other countries in the world that are having conversations about universal basic income, but also with policy, education, students, all these people who were having that conversation.
And if you say that, it means that there's a huge campaign. I mean, I don't know what you are thinking, but it immediately with me it goes like there's a lot to be explored, there's a lot to be done. But you're now, I don't know if Miriam is in this as well as an impact producer already, or how or what do you think if you hear this, like financially, partners, or Rob, one of you, what do you think now? What could be done on a film like this?
Free money.
Give free money is what I'd say. I mean, I'm a total advocate of universal basic income. I told you all my background. I believe that large portions of the community that I came from would certainly be totally different people today if they just had a bit of financial stability. And I think, we're living in a world where that radical difference between the poor and the rich is getting bigger and bigger. And I think universal basic income will be fundamental, especially if you look at how skills are evolving.
That's your passion, but now if you now go to the work, how to shape this in terms of for an impact campaign?
Well, I mean, I think I haven't watched the film, so I have to disclaim that first, because I don't know what the outcome is. But from some minimal research that we've done at Think Film around universal basic income for other projects we worked on, I mean, it's clear that Kenya could be a real champion country in a high-level government arena to share their findings with other countries and to actually implement a chain effect, right, a domino effect of other communities piloting. So, if we were working on it, the first thing we'd want to do is set up a domino effect of 6 countries piloting universal basic income. And then we want a consortium of scientists to monitor the results and say, this is how we saved X amount of money to the GDP over 10 years, and this is the value it has. I know it sounds really strategic, but if you don't do that, nobody cares, because everything is about money. And even if it's free, everybody cares about the money and the return on their money. And we also have to be honest, so I'll link it quickly back to the industry. That's going to bring value to your film because people watch it because they see there's something they're getting a return, and that makes the impact valuable. And I guess that's just something that we think at Think Film, is that impact is also about showing the industry there's a value in doing it, not just charity. And I think that's very strong in what you said about the models.
So are there questions, by the way, from the audience? Are you all like listening? Yeah, there's a question. Shout loud. She was wondering about the role of academic research in relation to impact, you mean? Yes, of course. Well, is there anybody who wants to say something on that? I mean, there's always, of course, you need to do the research in order to generate the impact, I would say.
We do nothing without academics. That's just without them. Always with them, always looking at all the perspectives, looking at all the research, and that's part of our strategic road mapping process. We look at the gaps in research as well, because obviously academics are still people working for institutions and they have an agenda. So sometimes it's good to see what's missing in that agenda and to try and launch consortiums of academics on radical sides coming together to find new spaces. So research is everything. We always say, as documentary filmmakers, you are PhDs of your story. And I always take my hat off to every documentary filmmaker I meet, and I go, you could just get an honorary PhD after working 5, 10 years on a project. But if we forget that scientists have been working on these issues for hundreds of years sometimes, it's so important to bring them into the mix and see what results they can awaken us with, and how we have a role as filmmakers to transmit that.
So we can conclude that when you think of a really good impact, you need like specialists, and you, in your case, you do academics. Is that for you the same? That you get academics in, or yeah, you need to be.
It's probably part of the, part of making of the film, and documentaries that are, require years of research and
Yeah.
development, and I think from that, that's where the impact ideas would spark from. So I think it's integrated into the production and the development of the film.
On a more not so much practical, but you said at the beginning and in your keynote, like the casting is really important. Like, who's your protagonist in the film? Can that person carry the impact? And sometimes it's obviously subject-wise. Could you elaborate a little bit, or anyone, like
I
how
don't know,
important is that?
I mean, you call it casting. It's more like who do you encounter, right, in
Yeah,
this journey?
yeah. Sorry.
So we don't do casting, but of course you feel you
Well,
have
you
first
cast
of
in- yeah,
well,
yeah,
first
yeah.
of all we were on the road researching and then finding, possible protagonists. He would have a click. You would feel like, yeah, this is someone who understands also what we want to do. That is also someone who is not, who is understanding on a really, bigger level, I guess, than just, oh yeah, great, a film. But so, for example, Sajid Khan, he right away understood what, we wanted to do, and he was really involved. What I meant with having your protagonist play a really important role in the impact is that, of course, it's pivotal to have them with you. If you don't have your protagonist, you don't have an impact, I think. You don't have an impact strategy. And it's really important to keep on checking in on them. Like, how are you feeling about this? Are you still okay?
Yeah.
How do you feel sharing your story? They grow into that role as well. Literally, I've seen Mohammed, who was 14 when we met him in Bosnia, who grew, is now 18. He grew with every screening we did, from a pretty shy kid to becoming really proud of sharing his story, and also literally, because he's almost 2 meters now. But I mean, so you go into that's also a journey, and sometimes, for example, Mohammed now, he was really important at the first phase, and then now he's just really focusing on studying. So he's not joining many screenings. But Sajid Khan, he's like, how can I be a human rights activist? He loved it, loves it. And I'm telling him, well, you already are, I think.
Yeah.
Somehow you became one.
You became one without knowing.
And so that evolves, I think.
Yeah.
But that they were part from the beginning of making the film, and that it's really their story, that was really at the core also of the impact, I think. We couldn't have done that without them already evolving them in making the film and being in close connection with them for 3 years making the film.
I think there's one thing. Sorry, one thing to think about as well when it comes to impact is, again, speaking from a place where resource is scarce, is it's become an avenue in which filmmakers get money to make films, but then there are a number of filmmakers who genuinely may not want to get into impact, but essentially are forced into impact because that's the only way they could make the films. And that becomes a very dangerous situation because you are, you're not, the heart is not in it, but how else do you make the film? So it's I think as people who are in the space or people who are having this conversation, I think it's important to kind of see the danger in being like, okay, you want to have a social impact and you want to do all these things. How does that money affect the filmmaking process and the filmmakers who are getting into that process? Because it also affects the protagonists and the people you're filming in this. Because there are people who are like, I'm done, I'm out, I don't want to be a part of it. But then there was a whole promise of an impact campaign when the film
in relationship
was
to finance and so on, and then that influence. Is that, Rob? Is that something that you're dealing with impact films for so long? Have you had encountered or discussions with NGOs and so on? Like, listen, there's a creative voice here which has to be heard, and you can't touch that, or that they promise to have like main characters doing things, but who want to jump out for obvious reasons. Or it's getting dangerous.
In the making of the film?
No, after, during the impact campaign. So, like, during the making of the film, you make, that's what you mean, Sam, no? You make financial deals or something with an NGO or with another organization, and then for a reason, the protagonist of the film is like, I can't anymore. I don't want to work on the campaign.
Oh, about the talent supporting the impact campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, Danielle, you could speak to this actually. It really depends. Like on.
No, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, I think it's something that can. elevate the impact campaign. If you have the director or in the case of Dark Waters, we had Mark Ruffalo was a producer on the film, and he was very involved. So he wanted to go to speak at the European Parliament and do all the things around the issue in the film, which is about pollution and kind of the date. But at some point, obviously, the talent, they have other things to do. So I think a lot of our we're just considerate of that, and I think it's not expected on a participant film that the talent would have to be involved in an impact campaign. Like
okay,
those things.
That's an important.
It can be a. It's thoughtfully done with the distributor in mind and with the filmmakers in mind, and working with the artists.
So you have different ways of dealing with that. But Laura, you wanted to reflect.
Yeah, I think it also comes from the space of providing freedom for the campaign and making sure that not only within the deals with NGOs, but also the relationship that the filmmaker is going to have with distributors and broadcasters. It's a long conversation we had with Efje a few times ago, but there are some distributors, and I think more in the US, that are now really embodying impact and considering it, but I think it's still a minority. And I think this is something that needs to be voiced out for filmmakers to understand that if they see an impact potential, they need to consider it as early as they can so that they can integrate in their relationship with anyone who's going to partner with them the freedom they want to put in place to make sure they can have non-commercial screenings, to make sure they can develop a specific marketing communication and other tools for the campaign. And also we were talking about that with Efje, not only the relationship with broadcasters, making sure that you're going to just know when your film is going to be broadcasted so you can leverage it. But it seems simple, but it's just not the case. And we've talked to some filmmakers who told us, I think it's too late because my deal is like really tight. And I'm not sure
with the distributor.
And I'm not sure I can have a lot of space to do things on this side. Of course, it can evolve and conversations can be open later. But it's something that is not only with the NGOs, but it's with everyone. Like control and freedom is something that needs to be explored, and a legal framework also.
Yeah, exactly. That's,
to make sure that there's a potential for a campaign and making sure that it can happen if it has to.
Yeah, that's good.
I 100% agree with that. But Sam, I also think you brought something up really interesting and that we've experienced at Think Film many times is, the idea that all the film institutes and all the foundations and all the NGOs, they stipulate things they want from you, right, from the film. This is what I want, this is how I want it to look, if I'm going to give you this money. And I think sometimes we say, if you're, as a Creative Europe or as a financial film fund or a philanthropist or an impact equity investor, basically, if you believe in the biggest change, you believe in not editing the artist at all. Because the artist has the biggest power to reach the community. And that's something we've been fighting a lot for with Think Film, is like, just believe in it because it will be bigger than any campaign that you've paid for in your life. Because the more independent, the more powerful, basically. But the other side of that is they have all these stipulations. So we've also been working to make sure that it's structural. And we've had public broadcasters, I won't say which country yet because it will be announced very soon, who've just invested 6 figures in impact before the film is finished. And you'll hear that not from me because they'll kill me if I tell you myself. But,
which title?
Oh no, I can't say that. But basically, it's about working together to make sure that basically impact is financed and everybody has an integral role and you have that independence. Because if the money comes from a film fund, you could have 6 NGO partners and you can tell them exactly what you want from them because you have the power. Because at the end of the day, money is power, right?
And to continue on that, I think that I fully agree with you, and specifically that for the broadcaster, distributor, it's a chance to have an impact campaign. And it's something they need to integrate because it's going to provide awareness. It's going to provide a larger audience that they are not usually going to reach. So it's a win-win situation. And that's
something they have to learn. That's why we're doing this.
And
Because there's a question in the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back because one of the things that Sam was talking about with the protagonist in the film, and I think this is also what you were referring to, and certainly Efje's presentation at the beginning, for me that was really about this notion of duty of care to the protagonists of the film. And that, can you talk maybe, Efje, and I know Storyboard's made a commitment to support that work, which is the duty of care to the protagonist extends and actually morphs a bit. And can you talk a little bit about how it changed when you started doing the impact campaign in terms of working with your subjects?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really important subject. I think what we all agree on as journalists or documentary makers, that you don't pay your protagonist, right? So that's also something that we made very clear while filming Shadow Game. We would always tell them, you know, it's really harsh, but we can't help you. Like, what you need is a plane ticket and a passport, and we can't give that to you. And we can't offer you money. We can stay in touch. We will fight to tell your story, and we will, you know, stay in touch. And we kept that promise, but that we were very clear. So, of course, they never made money from the film, but at the same time, impact, it costs money, but it raises money. I think altogether with crowdfunding, with our Shadow Game fund, I think now maybe we are up to maybe 40,000, 50,000 euros that we raised. Yeah. We won money from prizes that we got, from Movies That Matter, other prizes from FEFTH, and we were like, that's not our money. Let's put it in a fund for the boys, you know, and we could spend it on them, on their family reunification, on a fitness membership card for Eski, who loves bodybuilding. And it's good for your mind as well as your body, right, to fitness. We use it for many different things. And now we're reaching to another level that we've been, you know, they've been part of the campaign. And they actually became ambassadors of their story. They became experts. And I think when we ask them to speak somewhere, they should be paid. So when we are invited to speak at a panel, we don't only say that, you know, Els and I should be paid, or Zohar Al-Kaisi, or amazing researcher who's a journalist, should be paid. But these kids, if you invite them to talk about their experience, pay them.
Yeah.
So I think it's changing, and it's not a promise you make beforehand, and also because you don't know. Like, it's a journey, like you find out along the way. But I do think that for us this is a way forward, at least.
I think so. You want to
I think it's even more complicated, again, if you're filming in a space where you're filming people who don't have money to eat, right? So here I am coming with a camera that costs what will change the lives of this village to film, and I'm like, no, I just want to capture this. And then, you know, we don't know where this film will end up. We don't know if it's a very difficult conversation, right? Hopefully you guys, I'm encouraging you to watch Free Money, because this is something that's at the heart. If you watch the film, I think we'll have more conversations about it. But it's something I believe has to be a conversation we're having.
Absolutely.
In how we're engaging with subjects of our films and the situations, because if you're filming and essentially affecting them working, for example, you can't tell me that, you know, from the goodness of their heart, we are hoping one day your film will make money. And of course, we preach that documentaries don't make money. So how do you engage in that world? So it is such an important subject and something that realistically, I'm like, why can't we do that? Yeah.
Just super quick, one example that connects to you and what you were asking, Trisha, was with The Cave, with Dr. Amani. The filming stopped, the Oscar campaign finished, and we proceeded. We got her asylum in Germany. We fought with her. We got a legal team. She's now free in America. She's running as an ambassador for the Syrian American Medical Society. Nobody paid us for that extra part. I can tell you that Nat Geo did commit an extra amount of money to help us do that the whole way. But we went to them and said, there's no way it ends here. Like, she has to be free. She's going to run your whole Oscars campaign and then she's going to be stuck? No way. Like, we couldn't live with ourselves, right? And they really did help us deliver that. And we check in on her regularly to make sure she's fine. But she's, like, really happy now. But the duty of care is crucial.
Yeah. There's a lady who has a question.
I have a question for the filmmakers here. Are you aware of ShareDoc? Maybe you saw already a QR code on the screen, and you can invite the audience to help your protagonist. This is very easy. It is already funded. It's paid by European Creative Desk. So if you like information, please come.
Okay, very good.
And Marta, I wanted to add something on that conversation. It's also a conversation we had together last year when we partnered with Movies That Matter, and we're thinking what could be useful as a grant for one of the projects that you had in Take on Film and Impact. And we thought, well, let's try to find a project that is going to, we called it the community grant, that is going to give back to the community. And because it can be a protagonist, but it can also be a protagonist being the face of a community around. So making sure that it was a community source story and that the grant would be actually used unrestricted. Like we believe in the choice of the people actually working in the field, but going back to the community. And it was for Jennifer and her project in the Philippines, and the grant is actually going to help those young women getting out of sex trafficking in the Philippines and going back to them. So, and it's something we learned from another festival in the US, and I think that there needs to be from funders more initiatives like this, because an impact campaign can be so many different things. And what we just heard with your 2 different movies, 2 different campaigns, 2 different strategies, ways of thinking, ways of doing them. You've done tons. Each time it's a different participant too. But it's really about thinking what is going to make a great impact. And sometimes it's just a small act, but it's what is going to be a game changer. And the community and the protagonists are the center of it. So funders and philanthropic organizations, they need to think more about it. And making sure that there are grants too for
them as well.
For them as well. Not only just for actions and communication and outreach and audience, but also to make sure that they can continue their fight, because usually they're advocates and they don't always know it, but they're advocates and fighters for important causes.
Are there still... Yeah? Go ahead.
Hi. I more out of curiosity, I'm first of all so inspired by all of the impact campaigns that you're sharing on the documentary side. As a writer in fiction, who is at a documentary festival, but I'm just really curious if you have any examples of impact campaigns for particularly series, for fictional series, and how the kind of social justice work that you do in the documentary world, how can we bring that into the world of narrative, where these stories are being shared with probably a very large population of people who don't watch documentaries but are still being educated in everything that they're exposed to in on Netflix and Amazon and blah blah blah. Do you have any examples of that?
Rob, can you reflect on? I think you're the one, because you do fiction. You do quite a lot. No.
The answer is no. Well, we are doing episodic series. I can't think of a good example of what you're talking about.
But
it would be the impact campaigns kind of vary in the levels of what. So I can't think of a really.
I think an interesting episodic impact campaign to look at is Michaela Cole's "I May Destroy You," and what it did and how it kind of played out. And I know a couple of local, because we in Kenya we have it was probably one of the most popular series that was made, was about how it's called Siri, which means secret in English, but it's how what do you call it, farm workers are mistreated and taken advantage of. I think it's kind of close to what you're talking about in Roma, and not necessarily being on the nose about it or being like, this is the change, I want to make that kind of thing. But again, instigating conversations and encouraging conversations, but again, creating resources in which anyone who wants to have that conversation. But one thing that's super important, I think, in almost all the impact campaigns and conversations we're having is about grassroots organizations. Because something about impact is you're not reinventing the wheel. There is someone, there is community, there's people, there's communities, there's people out there doing what you are trying to do. And they're the best people to talk to. So if you don't find an impact campaign for a series or anything, there's definitely someone or a community or an organization out there that's doing something incredible. And if you talk to them, you will be surprised to hear what they're doing.
Can I add? Yeah, I think you're pointing out something really, really important, and that's that don't look at things from a top-down perspective, right? Like, so we're making this film, and probably like we're the first one to address this topic, you know, and you're not. Basically, you're not. You're not that original, maybe. And indeed, there's so many amazing people working on it. And with Shadow Game, it's, as I said, like it's a fight on many fronts, right? Talking about pushback, but also like people taking care of these kids while on the road. It's when they come to the Netherlands, what kind of asylum system are they being confronted with? So you have so many different subtopics, and on all those subtopics, people are working. So we are connecting with schools, you know, who are trying to teach these kids when they arrive. We are working with grassroots organizations that are fighting the violence on the border. One of our amazing impact partners was the Center for Peace Studies in Croatia, who are fighting the fight on the border every day. And you go and ask them, what do we need? How can we help you with our film? And not the other way around. You don't say like, we have an amazing film, here, go and do our...
Take it.
Yeah, you know, so I think that's really important. And indeed, a lesson that we learned is grassroots, not the big NGOs. Not the UNHCR.
And I think it's...
I mean, really, like, these are the ones that really are making a change,
It's back to what Laura said, and you have to start early in identifying this. It's not coming and then, we're done with the film.
No.
And,
and
like,
at the same time, it's evolving, right? Because along
Constantly
the journey, you're
changing.
literally meeting new people, I mean, we're getting emails almost every day from scholars or from organizations that want to do something, say like, hey, we've been working on this for a really long time. Like, yeah, let's work together. So,
just on your
very hard to make it.
Just on your point about fictional, we've got, I think, 4 projects. One is a fictional series that we're developing about Beyond Day Zero, so you know the complete drought in South Africa that happened, and it's a complete heroine story it's a bit like a Romeo and Juliet, but based in drought. And instead of weapons in military vans, people are fighting each other for water. And it's that kind of concept, right? But to answer your question about script consulting, like I think Amy particularly is the master of this, but we have been, we consulted at The Sun, the Hugh Jackman film, which is about suicide and young generations. Like, we look at those scripts early on because often there's an underrepresentation, and its impact can really, not us, but we can give the experts to consult on it so that it's legitimate. So I think the documentary and the impact work is often greater than fiction, right? So it gives you the story you need.
Is there another question? Because I know everybody has very packed schedules, and we're talking for over 1.5 hours now. So I think it was a success. I think personally, I think we learned a lot about what impact can be, what you can do. They keep on chatting. They're not listening to me anymore at all. That's okay. That's all. No, that's all good. You know, that's all good. No, you see. No, I love it. You give a. No, but really, for everybody in the house, really, why Movies That Matter was first Amnesty International. The idea was like when we have papers and so it's really bad in Kenya, and when I see the film Softie, it hits you in the face. So film is such an incredible medium. Diane knew that for a very long time already. You know it for a long time. And these are fantastic people, really. And there's on the first row sitting some really fantastic people as well. And on the 1 to 3rd row, and amazing impact producers. And maybe on other roles as well. So please reach out and make sure for the filmmakers in the house, the producers, and also the distributors in the house, to really, really see film, not only that it wins Sundance or being played there or goes to the Oscars, the Emmys or whatever. It can be like in a really, really small festival and then bring it to the communities or anywhere else. And that's really, Laura, we are very full-hearted about that to help you. So can always reach out to Laura. Laura, can you stand for a sec so everybody knows it's you? You can reach out to us at Movies That Matter for this. Our call is open next week. When is your call open? It's closed. Oh, it's closed. Sorry, that one is closed. Ours open. Yeah, there's a lot. So please make your films travel. It's important. Thank you all so much.